Canada is a country. Waves of people came to this country, were welcomed by the folks who have lived here for millennia, the First Nation. And built this society with waves of people fleeing religious persecution, fleeing tyranny, fleeing to try and build a better life for themselves here than they had back home. Whether it's folks fleeing from world wars or fleeing from civil wars, these people always want the same thing: to be able to live in peace, to raise their families, to create a better future for themselves and their communities. And that is what generations created this extraordinary diverse society we have. Now, Canada remains one of the only countries in the world where citizens are, by and large, positively inclined. And one of the reasons we are that way is because Canadians have confidence in our country.
That speech gets me like deeper and deeper every time, you know? He's just like, I have confidence in Canada. I have confidence in Ukraine. I have confidence Arab Spring will come again. Yeah, that's what it feels like when I hear Justin Trudeau speak. But I like that. I like the sound of music. Happy MK Canada. How are you? I'm Andreas. Welcome. What's up? With us is Kurt. What's up, Kurt? How you doing? I don't know if I'm reversed or which. If I go like this, does it point to you? Is it reversing? Yes. Okay, so like
you had it.
It's crazy. Exit stage right is Kurt, and then Kurt from American Time Machine is very close to Stephanie. Stephanie, how are you? Good to see you. Stephanie Scott. Fantastic Canadian. If you guys remember her murals, there's pictures of them with Trudeau. They're like, it's like art intersecting with art.
Yeah, he's touched my work.
Dude, which is weird because that means you've touched all of Canada, and that's amazing. And not even in the weird way that Justin Trudeau did it. So good job there.
Thankfully.
Jordan, good to see you, man. I love you. How you been?
Good, brother. How you doing, my friends?
With a maple red giant C. C for Soviet hockey. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. C for Criterion, brother.
I do love the Criterion collection. There's a German movie from the 60s that I have to... Okay, before I spiral out of control. Phil, good to see you. Phil can only join us every other week, so it's actually a pleasure to see you. What have you been up to? What have you been doing before I get to Vincent? Poor Vincent.
Oh boy, just studying a lot. School's getting started again, and the winter is really getting me down. So, that's kind of sad.
Yeah, the winter's nuts. I feel like a hypocrite because I visited California and I was outside all day wearing shorts. So it's not the same, but yeah, it's different. About a few days ago, that's the amount of time, I was in Minnesota and it was freezing, and I was noticing also that I am above Toronto. If you look at Toronto's lower than parts of Minnesota, right? So it gets pretty freaking cold, but also the day's getting short. So what is it like for you? Yeah.
That's the thing. It gets dark super early. I end school at like 5:30 and it's super dark. I wake up at 7:30 and it's super dark. It's just dark all the time. But
what do you do to mitigate it? Do you deal with I always have like LED rope lights. You can't even see them on right now, but I use them all the time to keep colors happening. Do you do anything like that?
I take cold showers. That's all I can do.
I do that too. I'm a big fan of that.
That's good for you.
Yeah. But at the same time, I think winter is my favorite season again.
Oh, yeah.
It's your favorite season?
Yeah, winter. Ironically enough, because it's terrible. And it's cold and you have to put on this... It's terrible. You got to put on this like astronaut suit to get outside.
Yeah.
But and like defrosting the car is terrible.
But at the same
time, it's
I learned about that.
Yeah, mine was buried. But at the same time, it's great because everyone is kind of helping each other.
Yeah.
You know? And I was there like trying to dig out my car, and this random guy just came over, and he had his shovel, and he just helped me, for no reason. And just. Today, I helped a guy like push his car out of the snow, and it's like we're all fighting this common enemy. and it's just it's worth it. So that's why winter's my favorite.
Dude,
Nice.
I'm glad you articulated it that way. That's exactly how I feel. And when I was in Minnesota, I'd say it. Like, I know it sounds a little Disney of me to say, I love the winter time. Because everyone's crashing into people. It's so horrible. I have a friend who
that's
crashed
true.
into a student driver car on their first day of student
Oh.
driving car because of the ice and stuff. And they're just like, my life is over. I can't even anymore. It's like, it's just so hard. Everybody's crashing into each other because it's so slippery. And But I feel like the most important thing is to figure out ways of mitigating it. So getting lots of different kinds of light, having those LED rope lights and just rainbows and projections and things like that. I think it's important that you're constantly getting saturation of light. Do you worry about your sleep patterns? Like, how do you deal with your sleep patterns when there's no sun? Like, you're a plant, right? So what happens?
I sleep pretty okay. I try to wake up early, which is not something I'm used to doing, but just wake up, cold shower, and I feel freaking amazing for the rest of the day. So
Cold
it's
showers
not
are
actually a worry. Huh?
Cold showers are the way to go. I'm
Yep.
all about. I love cold showers.
Yep, and shorts in the winter.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I'm that
Dude.
guy. Like you.
Yeah, you seem like that guy, bro.
What do you mean I
think
seem like that guy?
I think it's good for you, man. It makes the breathing. It helps you control yourself. Have you ever read that book, The Way of the Peaceful Warrior?
No, I haven't.
There's this sweet book that they forced me to read this time. I got sent to this desert military survival boot camp program thing. They're like, hey, now you get to do the solo mission part where you're out alone for a while and you get to read a book and we just like check on you with the like binoculars to make sure you're alive. So the book they made us read, it's about this kid in Berkeley and he meets this guy at a gas station who is like a Zen warrior / gas station attendant. And the dude teaches him how to breathe because he's like going to like Olympic gymnast shit. And then he eventually becomes this amazing trainer of all these other people. But it's through learning how to breathe like this little tiny old man who's able to beat up anybody. And his muscles are like, you can squeeze him like a cat and it goes down to the bone. And he's got like really elastic tendons and everything. So it's weird because it's a book designed for athletes and people that aren't really interested in meditation or anything like that. But it really quickly pulls you into your life and what value you can find in life. I would highly recommend this book. But it talks a lot about life exercises, what kinds of things you're doing.
Like a fictional Wim Hof.
Supposedly, this is like pretty true in the sense that, the names, anytime they say based on a true story, that means it probably isn't. And anytime they say like the similarities are entirely coincidental, that's legal language to protect the fact that it literally is based on some true thing.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that, but he probably combined a few people together, I think is the idea. It's usually easier to bridge your life into like one major character or something, but definitely an interesting story. Canada's donating 4 Leopard battle tanks to the Ukraine, right? So Germany did it first. We just talked about that.
And then I saw that the U.S. is sending in.
America said like Germany's supposed to say we weren't going to do it until America did it. And America said, well, we can't do it first. But then I think Germany did it first so that America could do it second. And then but Britain's been part of that too. There's a lot of countries that are associated with the crown that are doing this. I mean, it's 4. It's not even that many tanks. So what the heck does this even mean, really? Are we overreacting?
I mean, is in your eyes, Exertus, is this thing just building more and more, or is this just aid that should have been there in the first place, or what is your view on the whole Ukraine thing as it stands like right now?
Those things are probably like 4 million a piece at least. We have to look
at least, man. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, probably more like 20, but
more
I
like
could be wrong.
10 or 20. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I don't know for sure the value though. I could be wrong.
They
But they're
could
definitely
even
worth
be
a lot.
30 to 50 million each. Like war is expensive as shit. Dog.
Right. Yeah, and the thing is, I mean, who cares about the money though? Because money's fake. So I don't even really believe in money.
That's why
at
we
this
have
point.
so many wars, is because of money, dog.
I mean, it's just set up that you can pay. So they did this a couple decades ago. They realized that you bankrupt a state if you take away all their money. So what you do is you just create this arbitrary abstract income tax system that will perpetually pay for lifetimes of debt. Bolivia, La Paz, Gondola, I think is the one that I was thinking of. Here's a beautiful non-militaristic purposed way to take over a country. La Paz is in the mountains. It's really difficult to get from one mountain to the other mountain because you got to go down and up unless you don't. So they get these gondolas put in across the La Paz mountains. It's freaking amazing. Now, you'll notice they're different colors here. So what that really represents is socioeconomics. If you're up in El Alto, guess what kind of person you are? Probably not a native Bolivian. You know, you're probably like a Russian or a Chinese or a German or somebody who's got lots of money, and it's more expensive to take the blue line. If you live in like the Super Catchy, which is down here, that's pretty decent, but it's pretty poor. And you'll notice in like El Prado or Ushuaia, you got people washing their clothes in the mud. I mean, literally, just straight up, water's coming down the hill, and that's where they're washing their clothes. So it's crazy how dynamic the wealth distribution is. Anyway, they built this system in the last 20 years, and it cost hundreds of millions of dollars, the crazy amounts of money. I think they spent about $1 billion or more in infrastructure, and it included road systems as well. Probably good, so you can do trade. But now how do you pay for that? So every generation for the next 150 years has to pay some crazy new income tax that Bolivians never had before. And it's begun this new cycle in Bolivia where these native Aborigines who've lived there forever and have never felt like they needed to pay for the place, all of a sudden are now kind of in a serfdom, you know. And this is all also ironically out of Bolivarianism. Like they tried using socialism to protect and liberate Bolivia, but it just turned into this perpetuated income tax system. I don't know. It seems like that's the problem with this is Canada just sort of expects to in every country to constantly pay taxes generation after generation. And it just becomes a natural thing that you're paying into whatever the state wants to do with it, even sending tanks, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, where do people think this is going to lead? Like, are they expecting Russia to just run out of resources, or
I know, man. I
to give
hear you.
up, or
Yeah,
like they're just dragging it on and on and on with?
Like, I don't know
who's gonna fold
much-
or what.
Well, obviously that's not what's going to happen because there's the BRIC, you know,
Right.
Brazil, Russia, India, China, and now
The
who added that?
BRIC.
Isn't it BRICA now? Because Arabia just added to BRIC. And so once BRICA happened, and that was like last week. Ooh, look
Whoa,
at that
BRIC.
weird Freemason picture. I like it.
Whoa, yeah, look at that.
It's pretty much
Pentagon. We got a couple. We got triangles all
four-
over the place.
That's like a 5-leaf clover. That's the skin. That's
We
nuts,
got a
man.
pentagram in there too.
I'm a fan of what they're doing here. Anyway,
Yeah, you are.
I like aesthetics, but so you know you're gonna have a situation really quickly where this landmass power is going, and they're already doing it. They're building a new economy. I think I just read Arabia kills petrodollar. That was the article I was looking at. Yeah, annihilate petrodollar, just kill petrodollar.
Mm-hmm.
Different people's perspectives on this, but basically the idea of the petrodollar as the standard is gone as of this year. Completely. It was last year, the last couple of years, we've all been expecting it to disappear, but they didn't have a replacement. Now it seems like they have kind of a replacement. Saudi Arabia has started a stalwart support of an alternative currency that's kind of a banking system built around the Russian economy, because the Russian economy is backed by actual resources. So of course that makes sense, right? Kurt, you were talking about this before, right?
Yeah, it's important. Well, some people want to make the distinction between Russia being like, well, a gold standard, and well, there's a slight difference. Like they've been buying.
D's on the gold standard. Welcome to the show.
Sorry.
Yeah.
No,
Well,
you're
they've been
cool.
buying back gold from central banks for a set amount. So instead of essentially the ruble being set of a standard to gold, gold is being more of a set of a standard to the ruble right now, which, you know, you're kind of splitting hairs a little bit. There's you're making it relative no matter what you're doing. So it's not a true gold standard, but it's kind of like it right now with what they're doing. And I'm really confused. I think Western media is really biased in how it presents things, and we all know that. But with how they've the last time I checked, early on in the war, Russia supposedly was spending about a year's worth of GDP for every 3 months that they were in the war, which seems unsustainable. And you would think it would be just over by now. But I think there's a combination of things where if you want to drag it out as long as you possibly can, well, like if I think Russia, they have a huge military, and when you have someone like Putin in power, I think you can just get away with a lot more. People actually, as much as we demonize him, the people actually like him a reasonable amount. So they could get away with excess spending for a very long time. It'll probably be bad for future generations, but it's hard to say exactly how things will play out. I have no idea, but it does seem like it's really, really expensive, and it's we're playing. We're essentially at war with Russia, but it's a proxy war. Yeah.
Phil, what do you think about the Arabian and Russian connection? Like the idea that now BRICA is going, BRIC is going to be BRICA, that there's, this new influence. Like the West has tried to court Islam for a long time. Obviously, you've got England and Canada have been pretty politically supportive, but culturally confused. And now all of a sudden Russia is saying, hey, we can work together. What do you think is going to happen?
It's not clear to me that the West has been trying to curb Islam. What do you mean by that?
Oh, I just mean like in England, for instance, you have Islamic officials who are politicians that have, been represented politically, but not culturally the same way. Whereas in Russia, there are actually whole subsets of Chechens are often Muslim. So it's not actually that crazy for Russians to interact with Muslims. A big major state of them have always been Muslim. In fact, several states, Tatarstan, for instance, has a lot of Muslims. So there are a lot of Muslims that are already Soviet aligned. I mean, Dugin has a lot of Muslim friends, whereas in the West, Islam is politically supported, but not culturally. It feels like I may be saying that wrong. Do you understand what I mean?
I see. Yeah, I mean, I don't know all that much about the Muslim world. I get the vibe that they're like this very cohesive kind of entity, very united, solidary side of, but know much about. Am I bugging out?
No, it froze for a second, but I heard you. Yeah, you're good.
All right. So yeah, I don't know. I'm not really an expert. I've been wanting to read about it, but for now, it's just the vibes,
It seems interesting that the West is supposed to get along with each other, but do you think there's going to be more and more? I mean, for instance, Bolivia is interested in Russia and China, so there will be Western states that are going to not align with the allies or whatever the Atlanticist movement is. Do you see that as being a thing in Canada? Like, there's a lot of Canada that's Chinese, a lot of Canada that's Arabian, a lot of Canada that's not really interested in being part of the British Commonwealth plan. Do you think that that's going to matter?
That's a good question, but I don't know. Like, Canada is really dependent on the U.S. compared to these other countries, so it's hard to say. I don't think so, though.
Talking about earlier, like a couple days ago, was it yesterday? God, the time flies. We were talking to some Austrian and German friends of mine about the Panic of 1873, which I hadn't really looked that deeply into the Panic of 1873 before, but apparently it mattered. And what they did was they stopped the silver standard. And I didn't really understand what gold and silver standard meant, really. I thought I did, but it's more nuanced. If you have a bunch of gold, they have to give you dollars for it, right? Like they have to print them essentially. And if you you wouldn't do that if your gold was worth more than the dollar. And at a certain point, silver was worth less and worth more. So they figured, okay, a bunch of people are going to be taking the silver from Nevada or from Bolivia, bringing it up to the United States, and then forcing us to sell huge heaps of our economy into natural resources. So they stopped the silver standard in order to stop inflation. But the problem with that is, of course, it led to what was called the Long Depression, which we only heard of the Great Depression. But the Long Depression was apparently actually worse because it lasted for decades.
So there, Charlie Munger, he recently did a video. For those that may not know, Charlie Munger is basically, he's the partner of Warren Buffett. He just doesn't get as much screen time. But he said in an interview that, and he literally said this. He said that if it weren't for fiat currency, the currency that most of the world has adopted right now, then Hitler never could have rose to power. And so throughout his explanation, he said essentially what happened that destroyed Germany's economy in the 1930s is that they just spent out their asses. And there's no way a government can spend out their ass unless they can have essentially an endless reserve. And so when you have a fiat currency and your central bank can just make more money when it wants to, you can very easily fall victim to excess governmental greed. And that is what happened in Germany in the 1930s. And when that crashes your economy and you create a power vacuum, it produces the perfect environment for people like Hitler to thrive. So that was his reasoning, but that's a crazy thing. If anyone else would to say that, like a problem.
I mean, Sir Francis Drake did the same thing. That's the thing. I mean, anytime you find out like that you can take over a nation by buying it, right? And all it took was you had to go find a bunch of this scarce resource someplace else. So they could. That's the reason why. I mean, so Potosi, for instance, is the silver mine. In the 15th century, they found out that they'd already been collecting silver from it. By the 18th century, they were collecting 10 times as much silver had ever been collected theoretically. And same thing in Nevada. And so it completely destroyed the silver value. So people who thought we could rely on silver as a currency, boom, they just took it away from them. And silver started being just, what else you got? Which is because it's inflation. But that happened 100 or 200 years earlier, right? This is 1870s, 1670s. Sir Francis Drake, or is it the 1570s? Sir Francis Drake brings so much gold to the west, from the west to Europe, that gold is inflated, and silver is actually more rare than gold. For a while, silver is worth more than gold. So, I mean, this is not the first time that we've seen like this idea that the gold standard or the silver standard aren't really necessarily safer. And that they can easily be manipulated.
Oh yeah,
per pound.
Per pound. Silver? I mean, at the time, per pound at the time.
Holy cow!
Yeah. And now, in hindsight, like things. I wasn't necessarily making an argument. Like I am a fan of having some sort of standard. But if you're going to criticize the idea of a gold standard and compare it to 200 years ago, a good counter argument is probably that we're a lot more entrenched in the Earth's natural resources. It's hard to imagine that we could inflate gold and silver in the same way that we did in the past. So I don't.
Are you a flat earther? Because if you believe in asteroids, that's the one that gets me, right? Is that if there really are asteroids made out of gold, then that does mess everything up. If someone were to just bring a big old rock like half the size of the Earth full of gold, I mean, it's like an island. Well, probably, but
you're just an alchemist who converts lead to gold.
Mm-hmm.
That's the
ruins
real
the economy.
That's the real answer right there. Because if you look at the linear accelerator, its exhaust can be gold. Accelerator. So it doesn't actually take as much energy as it used to build a linear accelerator. And because they have so many of them and they're using them for so many purposes that I hear someone's mic going scratchy, by the way. That's okay.
Might have been mine.
That's okay. But you can build a linear accelerator with not too many moving parts at this point, and then you have to have certain kinds of gases, but the energy consumption is no longer as crazy because you've got all of these, you've got hydraulic dams, these hydroelectric dam systems that are being used produce so much energy. In fact, like the Iguazu Dam produces what is it? 1/3 or 2/3 of the electricity in all of South America is produced by this one dam, this hydroelectric dam. So the amount of energy that we're producing naturally that can be used for alchemical purposes, I mean, it's at this point pretty amazing that the places where the linear accelerators are places where green energy is so important now. I mean, California's got a linear accelerator in Berkeley, which is like hippie capital. There are linear accelerators in New York and Germany, in China and Russia. They're all about green energy. So, I mean, yeah, you could be producing gold. The problem is it's atomic, so you're dealing with small amounts of it as you produce it. But you could 3D print a spaceship out of gold, or you're just constantly lasering it together. So gold can be created, that's for sure. Diamonds are being grown. All the value that we understand, it seems like we have to move beyond gold as value. And this is what's scary because they're telling you about usury taxes. And I think these valuable things, what's valuable about gold? Is it valuable because it's shiny, or is it valuable because you can put it in electronics? You can use it for communication. So they're
valuable about any sort of money.
Well, yeah. Well, what is that? Philosophically, what is valuable about money? In a scarcity economy, you can get stuff that other people can't have.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think even having a monetary system is a little bit corrupting overall. Like just as a species, I think there might be some animal species out there that use like very minor currencies in trade, but I can't name examples. But I think they're there.
I
But
feel like crows would.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Shifty crows.
But in terms of how we use a system of exchange, it might be that just having something that we pretend is a store of value that isn't food or anything that is functionally useful, it might actually be a product of, I don't know, I think it's kind of a product of our collective greed a little bit, because I don't think there's that much stopping us from having just a goods, well, a trade, an economy based on the trade of goods, pure goods. Imagine, that's been ingrained out of our psyche for like the past 100 or 200 years for sure. But I don't think there's really anything stopping us from being more connected to our food and being more connected to each other and having a more communal sort of lifestyle. I think really expansionism has very much worked against us, and it's separated us from our nature too much. And so I don't think at the end of the day we actually need a monetary system. It's just something that we've gotten used to for thousands of years. But if you actually try to evaluate why do we fundamentally need this, the only reason we fundamentally need it is because we've expanded too much, and we have countries that are too big, and we're too reliant on essentially having a military that wants to kill a lot of people. So, and there's other militaries that want to kill a lot of people. So if we drew a lot of that back, I think we could very easily have an economic system that didn't even need currency. But it's so hard to let go of collective biases when having that discussion, because people just think you're crazy anytime you discuss anything like that.
How would that work on a large scale, though?
It wouldn't work on a large scale.
The only way it works is that you've got a dictatorship that decides what other people can exchange, right? Mm-hmm. So what you have to do is you have to prohibit the forum. So a real forum, and I know if I type in forum on the internet, I'm going to get other things. But no, there you go. Good. A real forum is a place for a free exchange of goods, services, and ideas. That's what a forum is. And so if you remove the bizarre quality of the forum, where people are able to exchange ideas and goods and services, then you no longer have free trade. And free trade is the issue, because free trade says I can choose not to, or I can choose to trade with you or someone else. And if that's going on, then you don't have democratization of trade, and you don't have a dictatorship of trade. Right? Democratization would be where the majority chooses what everyone else is allowed to do. Each minority is forced. Each individual is forced to do what is best for the utilitarian society, or what the society wants in their irrational mood. Or if a dictatorship is built, it could be a benevolent king. It could be a newarchy of platonic leaders that were raised to do this for you. It could be AI. But then AI says, okay, well, you can only have this many apples. And that person has to get 3 apples for their family. And they decide, and eventually we have to produce enough apples that there's oversaturation of apples, that we don't have to worry about scarcity anymore. So you immediately get rid of the reason for people arguing over which apple they want, because there's just so many apples. Like things like that would have to emerge. But then there would be lack of incentive for people to build new things, to grow new things. Like it would have to be, the infrastructure would have to take over. And so that's why like they show it in H.G. Wells' Time Machine, this idea of this idealized future where there's no money anymore, right? He goes to the future and he sees the Eloi. Hold on. And the Eloi are all peaceful, and they wear like clothes that they find in the woods made of organic materials, and there's just giant cherries the size of watermelons that they just find, and there's no work that they have to do, and they're just pleasant. But because of that, they don't care about each other. They don't aspire to do anything. They don't read any books, and it's terrible. And then he realizes it's partially because they're being raised by another people to be consumed like cattle. You know, and I think that's kind of the inevitability of a lack of stress. And maybe we've said before, hard times produce strong people, and then weak times produce weak people, or something like that. It might be that we're supposed to have a certain amount of scarcity.
Well, you can create scarcity artificially if you
Clearly.
want to. Yeah, we've done it with Bitcoin, but like who's actually using cryptocurrency to buy things? It's a very, very small amount of people that are kind of coming off of it now. But I think if you also want to create work, you can also create work. We've created useless jobs, and useless jobs are everywhere in our economy.
Let's say you're McDonald's and you decide you want French fries. So in order to give French fries to all of the world, you have to
one
buy
follow-up
out.
when you're done.
Oh no, go ahead. I'll decide it later.
Oh, sorry. No,
Yeah.
I the
It's a
only
rant.
reason I think we could have automated jobs at McDonald's by now. We could have automated fast food
Oh, they
jobs.
do.
They have like a
Completely.
kiosk.
But
Yeah,
like I think those jobs won't actually ever disappear due to automation. And the reason is I think there's a group of people that want to go into fast food places and just feel superior to fast food workers. Like they want
Yeah.
to see someone doing the
Wow.
work shit.
IBM just bought McDonald's lab. I guess they bought
Yeah,
a
I
large
think-
percentage of it. That's really interesting. So AI Labs was purchased by McDonald's, and then Big Blue bought. That's really
McDonald's
interesting.
will follow us into VR, into AI.
So let's say you're
We'll have people
McDonald's.
in machines, and we'll be ordering food through.
You'll be ordering
virtual
NFTs,
McDonald's, yeah.
NFTs that look like McDonald's that have like a feeling like you ate some food. But I remember,
Soylent Greenus.
imagine in the 80s. Okay, let me try this better. Banana milkshake. So I don't know if you guys remember this, but if you want to tie the Banana Republic into McDonald's. So at one point I was going to do potatoes because that was the Bolivian example, but let's do bananas. So they decide that they want to have bananas all over the place. So what do? They buy out the futures trading. What's futures trading? Well, futures trading is the Wall Street futures, where people are like, if you ever watch Jungle to Jungle, like he's like, I'll pay 16 cents, 0.16, 0.15, 0.14, blah, blah, blah. They're guessing on the value of coffee or bananas or whatever in the future.
Or
McDonald's
Trading
does
Places, if you've seen Trading Places with Eddie Murphy.
it. Way
Dan
better
Aykroyd.
example. Yeah, because there's
There
I
you
think
go.
a lot of Canadian actors in there. Dan
That's
Aykroyd.
always on TV.
Good call.
Yeah, it is.
And the guy who made that movie, Aaron Russo, who made
Who put the
America
coos out on my floor?
to fascism. The man who made Trading Spaces, Aaron Russo, made the best documentary on how come why you don't have to pay the income tax, why it's not actually a law. And he died like 6 months after he released this documentary. Highly recommend you watch Aaron Russo's documentary, America, Freedom to Fascism. I met him actually when he went around the country showing the documentary, and I had no idea he was sick. And then he just died like a month after. It was freaking crazy. Anyway, so McDonald's buys out all the bananas and all the potatoes and all of these different people. And they know, right, what they're growing because they know everywhere in the world. And they know that if you don't nitrogenate the soil, that after 3 years, it'll be completely ruined. And they continually push these prices down and force these people to grow these products, knowing that it will destroy the soil, meaning it will take decades to be repaired. And some big corporation's going to have to come in and do it for them and take over that small farm. And that's how you destroy American and international small farms using franchise. And they did this with fair trade coffee as well. Starbucks is known for doing this, but it's crazy because it completely destroys a country in so many brilliant ways. First, you destroy the value of the product. Then you force everyone to be obsessed with competing to make this product cheaper for you and better for you. And then you make the product destroy their environment so that they can't grow it anymore. And you move on to another place. And they've systematically done this around the world, right?
Well, wasn't the point of fair trade to counter this? Wasn't it like the opposite of this, where we pay? I mean, look, educate me.
Listen to yourself though as you say it, and don't you think even just saying that, doesn't it sound like they probably are messing with you, right? If they make you think that if you're doing good because you're paying a little extra. So here's the thing with fair trade, and Walmart actually invented this idea. Yeah, Walmart invented this idea. If you're putting local businesses out of business because you're selling your product too cheaply, you have to make it cost more. And so they started figuring out ways that they could justify it. And they said, okay, well, what we're going to do is we're going to give to the communities. We're going to make sure that the coffee is at a fair value. But what they're doing is they're systematically finding the cheapest places that they can buy the coffee that have been destroyed by this infrastructure. And the people that are growing the coffee tend to be very similar to foster farms where they don't even own the bean anymore. And it's it's a little bit better than the Banana Republic, but arguably it's because if you allow someone to own their own property, then they have to take care of it. They have to pay for it themselves. So it's actually a lower status that they've designed. And I think that that's kind of the thing. They're like, oh, you're free. Yeah, you're free. We don't have to take care of you. We just give you like 40 cents more for your, your coffee, essentially, or your bananas. And, systematically, again, they have to start looking. And some of these groups have decided they want to get out of this and like, oh, I don't want to grow bananas anymore. Also, remember who fair trade bananas was pushed by? George Bush Sr. He was trying to get fair trade bananas and chrysanthemums to replace cocaine, which if you've ever tried to get a stripper up to your room with a banana and a chrysanthemum, it's not as easy. I don't know. So
creative.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, you can do it, but I don't know. Just the idea that we're all being bred to be weaker and consumables. I think it's less of a metaphor and more of a reality.
Mm-hmm.
Spiritual reality.
God, I mean, so can MK Canada become MJ Canada? Am I right, fam? Can we talk about this for a second? I know nobody cares. It's like, wait, why? What is there some is it topical in any way? Okay, a Michael Jackson biopic is happening. Here's everything we know so far. Nobody cares about Michael Jackson but me, I found out, but that's fine. I remember
I care about it.
I think a lot of people are
you
like
guys a bit of a, he's crossed a few lines, but he put out a few good tracks too.
He said a
a
few
few
things.
good tracks. The dude was like King Arthur. Like he pulled the sword from the stone that is music and created music. Like there was no music before Michael Jackson. I don't know.
about
This guy-
that. Now you're just saying nonsense.
This guy.
What lines did he even cross?
I mean,
Yeah.
he's trauma. He's
What are
trauma
you
programmed.
Yeah, aren't those alleged?
Right. Well, actually, so
Yeah.
recanted is actually a better word. So all of the kids, whoever said that they were touched by Michael Jackson, actually none of the kids said that. It was all their parents who said it. All the kids recanted and said, no, my parents were just trying to make money from it. Every single one. And there's this album I recently was re-listening to,
Is that where we are
History.
with it now?
Yeah. I mean, in fact, even the what was that documentary that Oprah and they're all pushing? They had to pull it off Netflix, right? Was it Neverland?
Finding Neverland.
Yeah, Finding Neverland. The guy who was in the documentary turned out to be a total liar.
Yeah, it
had
was all
never
debunked.
had never met Michael Jackson until years after, or before. The other kid had never even been to the mansion because the mansion didn't exist yet. Neverland Ranch didn't exist yet. The whole thing was just completely made up. And this had come a few years after all the other kids had already recanted. And Michael Jackson was already dead. And we're like, really? But what was interesting was Michael Jackson has this huge Neverland Foundation, which gives money to victims of child abuse and human trafficking. So all the money and proceeds, considering he's not buying his own stash anymore to stay alive, that's going towards that money would be going towards kids that are hurt. And that money doesn't exist when people aren't buying Michael Jackson music because the Babylon system has just disappeared him out of their consciousness. And yeah, like most people just think he's a weirdo, right? Because they figure, okay, like here's a guy who was molested maybe, or they don't really look into why he was so messed up by this system.
Well, his dad
that
was
produced him.
nuts, man. His dad was so
abused him
abusive.
so much.
Yeah. Michael
Like,
Jackson's
there's
father.
He's probably like the most blatant example of like MK Ultra programming.
There you go. Yeah.
His dad, total handler, got him molested. He used his son's funeral to promote an album for another one of his kids. or something.
Wow.
It's all laid
Yeah.
out in his art, really.
It's sick.
What a greasy
Yeah,
bag.
Neverland Ranch, like he lives in Neverland. Of course, he's the child eternal, you know.
And that's another thing. I think people get really upset at him for, when he basically retired because he'd made all of his money, done all those things. And he said, all right, now what do I want to do? Well, I never got a childhood. I wasn't allowed to have that. Am I allowed to have that now? And I think a lot of people said no. They're like, you're not. Like, it's too late and you didn't get it and you just move on. And I don't know if that's right either, right? I mean, if he wants to have a nice fairy tale garden home, I don't see the problem with that. And it was right across from this boarding school I went to, actually. And right next to Reagan Ranch. And he provided the fire service insurance for the entire mountain in case there was fires in the valley. And he was really cool. Like he was cool to all the kids. And we could go to Neverland Ranch once in a while. I think we got to go once. But the idea is still unfair that we've made it out that this guy is this like insane psychopath. And there's a song on his History album, DS
I mean,
Tom Sneddon.
He is wearing makeup right there.
Well,
That's
yeah,
a
I
nice
mean,
armband he had.
I'm not saying
there.
that's a bad
He
thing.
got burned really bad.
yeah, that's the other thing. Let's talk about the Pepsi accident. MJ Pepsi accident. Do you guys know what I'm talking about?
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's remember that he refused to do something. They didn't like what he was up to. He did a really dangerously done Pepsi ad, which lit his head on fire. And there's been speculation that it wasn't a complete accident, right? And then, afterwards, they put him on all kinds of weird pills and everything. This like kid who'd never done any drugs before because he was like a child star and a Jehovah's Witness. I mean, that completely destroyed his life in a lot of ways. I think it led to him being maybe a drug addict or any of those other things, but also probably to the reasons he had so many surgeries, right? I mean, we forget that.
I mean, I don't know why you like. It's clear how different his face is. Like there was clearly a lot of plastic surgery there.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Like that is nothing. I don't think that it has much to do with getting
You don't
burned on your
You
scalp.
don't think that like if you get a traumatic experience and are given drugs to make it better, that might cause some imprinting of patterns that like now you think surgeries and drugs are going to make it better every time.
Like, did he have the dimple on his chin? Oh, I mean, I see what you're saying now. I see what you're saying. No.
Kurt just had to freaking throw that in there.
I get your point. I mean, like
Attaboy,
he did take. Maybe that's the other thing. So like basically because he fell apart, like people judge him really hard. Though I don't think people really get like all he went through at that point and the kinds of music he put out. So again, like the History album, MJ History. The songs are about like people like Tom Sneddon. He literally has a song. Tom Sneddon is a cold man. He has songs. They don't really care about us. Talking about the CIA and everything. He outed and put on blast all these people. He put on blast Sony, called them the devil for what they're doing, and really just pointed out like this guy is a pedophile, probably, who's saying that Michael Jackson is the pedophile, right? And all of these different situations, he was constantly trying to out these people. And what did they do? They made it out that he was the guy doing literally the things he was saying other people were doing for the last 10 years prior. So, I mean, it seems like it's important because of the Epstein association as well, because Epstein could not get around Michael Jackson. And he was at that time in the 90s. Ghislaine Maxwell wanted to be around everybody famous, could not get with him. And it was clear he didn't trust a lot of the human traffickers around the world. And these guys who were probably involved with keeping it safe to human traffic for the elite, they came after him because he was a whistleblower.
Interesting.
Is that too outlandish? Michael Jackson, Epstein whistleblower?
Crazy. What's
They don't
that?
really care about us.
Who's the whistleblower, dog?
I mean, his music, though, if you listen to
definitely, Michael Jackson said a lot of stuff that pointed to a lot of problems in the world. And, he made it clear that there was something wrong with the world and the industries that he was a part of. But he might have done some really messed up shit as well. Like, I can't.
True.
There's
It's
no
possible.
reason to. I don't
It'd be
know,
nice if we had
know.
one unrecanted story to believe that with, though. I try to go with the innocence of proving guilty part.
True that.
I think
it's possible.
The whole feminine image, it might have been. I think it might have been some sort of, like subconscious father revenge plot. Like that's the best I can come up with for why specifically he wanted to look.
Dude, there are
feminine.
There are drugs that do things to you, and if you take certain kinds of
Estrogen.
neurohormones, and but there's neurohormones like certain kinds of tryptamines and things that are pretty good for flushing your skin. It can make you more effeminate, and I've seen that a lot in like the Superfly generation of drugs. So it's possible that like he was whacked out on a lot of things, but I also think it was because they put them on the drugs. D, what do you think?
How much control did he have over his own image?
D just got back.
Yeah,
Sorry.
no, Steph, what did you just ask? How much control did he have over his own image? Up until he was white, none. When he was a young kid, he didn't. Michael Jackson kid. It wasn't until like the 80s really that he kind of started to control his own image after the Pepsi commercial.
I see.
So like after he got married to Lisa Marie Presley, and then they got divorced, I think that's basically when he really was more in charge of himself. But up to that point, he had a lot of people that were kind of choosing for him how he looked. But when he put out that album, Dangerous, MJ, then, that's when he started working with all these other people on his own. And I think that's when he started networking on his own. And that's what led him to start outing people and saying all the stuff that he probably shouldn't have said. Before that, he was super shy. He only wore sunglasses in interviews. And after that, he was like telling people like, these people are the devil. They're the devil. And it's funny because he was like this innocent little boy before that, right? Like he'd spent his whole life playing music and that's all he knew how to do. So I think, he really was innocent in a lot of ways and sheltered because he didn't experience the things that we all experience.
But aren't there people who think that he sold his soul to the devil? Like say that he did, just like so many other.
I would do for
his
money.
father
I'd
did.
die for you, even sell my soul to the devil. Anything for money. Yeah, I know that song. I don't know if I think he sold his soul.
His dad sold his soul.
Yeah, I think he was saying that people sell their
Dad
kids'
sold
souls.
his son's soul.
Right. And
Pretty
that's
much.
the other
Sacrifice
interesting
the
thing.
children.
So
right.
getting into the really weird aspects of this. So if you look into the genealogy of the Jackson family, going back to before they were slaves, going back to Africa, they were actually part of the tribe that did music history. So theoretically, his job would have been to do music history, and they were probably royals. It sounds like. We're not sure, but there's evidence that the Jacksons have pointed out to that they're descendant from kidnapped royals. So it's a very interesting thing that you have human trafficking, and you kind of imagine like time space as this devil's illusion around you, so you're still a king, even if you're a slave. Like you've just been put in a situation like Job, where you're tempted by the devil. And if you can be tempted to sell your son, right? I mean, that's crazy, but that's part of the deal, is sacrificing your son. It's like ingrained and imprinted in culture. Abraham is supposed to sacrifice his son. It's become kind of natural. And I mean, this is a guy who would have been, a king in any reality. And here he is. He's kind of figured out how to become a king again, which is pretty impressive. Like he really lived like an emperor, and he didn't start that way. So it seems also like a statement of dharma that somehow he was able to re-achieve what would have been already his birthright. I love Michael Jackson.
He's got some good tracks. Like I said, he's got some good tracks.
I think the idea of the history thing, though, that's also weird to me, that they're supposed to be musical historians, and Michael Jackson, he did that. He put out a lot of evidence that they tried to hide. I don't know. Okay. Michael Jackson, Tom Sneddon, the DA is dark. About, what was this one? Okay, this is important. Tucker Carlson asked, why are we not sending an armed force north to liberate Canada? What do you guys think? Do you guys need our help? From Tucker?
Are we in
Tucker.
that much trouble? I didn't realize we were in that much trouble.
Yeah, I didn't even know what his problem was tonight. Tucker Carlson asked about Canada. We saw everything happening there last winter, the trucker protests and the crackdown by the authoritarian government of Canada. Carlson deadpanned. He was completely in favor of a Bay of Pigs operation to liberate Canada. I like the Bay of Pigs reference. You got to admit.
What is this? The Onion? Is this the
Come
Onion?
Carl said, why should we stand back and let our biggest trading partner, the country with which we share the longest border, why should we let that become Cuba? Like, why don't we liberate it? Rather than juxtapose North American politics with those of Eastern Europe, comparing Ukraine's President Zelensky to someone who is dressed like the manager of a strip club, issuing demands for money. The Fox host also felt Zelensky was fighting a war against Christianity, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so basically, you guys are helping out Ukraine, but so are we. So isn't this what's the deal here where we're constantly pretending like there's a dichotomy between us? It seems like both of our governments are allied and both of our people are allied, and it's not a left and right thing, it's above and below kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
The sleight of hand, a pantomime. They're playing all sides all the time, and that's it. Tucker Carlson is just another peon. But he's just as guilty as everyone he spends his time talking about.
MJ was framed because he refused to sell his music catalog to the CIA mob link music company. I know, and I wanted to talk about Apple Records and Paul McCartney and Tavistock and Mind Control and why it was amazing that MJ bought the Beatles. Because, come on, think about that. The Beatles are the gnarliest Mind Control thing in history, right? And then he bought their music. Come on, obviously they're trying to shut him down after that. They're like, what do we do? He has all the power now. He owns pop. He owns the idea of mind control. Right? That's
all those tracks that have all those codes and nonsense in them embedded.
I'm too excited about Michael Jackson. I did the Sir Francis Drake thing. It's another good one. The
What
crime.
happened? Why are you so excited about him today?
I don't know. I was listening to Michael Jackson a bunch recently.
Oh,
I got my okay. So this is my mom's cassette player, which is a super sweet cassette player, but it's broken, and I have to like replace a couple 6-volt circuits or something, some resistors. So then I went and I got this thing here for $30, which will play a cassette, and I'm gonna use that to digitize my mom's cassettes because I didn't realize how old cassettes are. Like, so this cassette, and I told you guys earlier, but the audience at home can know. This is my mom's cassette from 1973, Paraguay. So it's 50 years old, just about in March, and it's hand recorded.
Instructions on how to make love. Waka 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 waka.
Yeah, no, it's like actually well recorded in Paraguay by like hippie Californian and these folk rockers and stuff that were in the Peace Corps, and they had access to really good equipment because it's the CIA and the Peace Corps are like the same thing. And then they just so this is like 50-year-old endangered indie folk rock that needs to be released. So I have to do some work on that. And then I was listening to tapes. And I was thinking about tapes, and they're just so crazy. Like, I mean, this stuff, right? Like this iron oxide, and you magnetize it, so it makes these like sand marks, like a Zen garden, and the Zen garden of lines. And it kind of the way that the pattern moves, it's like a bunch of hairs with water pouring on it. The way it patterns out, so it's not just like digital the way you'd think of it. It's got some quality to it, and you can look at better musicians probably like these days, I guess. But Michael Jackson really, like, I feel like invented cassette tape music. He understood how to put the magnetism into the tape, so the right sounds, the bass would just bend in the tape. I don't know. It's like the best. And also the car I'm driving right now has a cassette player. So that was my line of thought to Michael Jackson. I don't know.
That was beautifully put.
Have you listened to much else on cassette lately?
I got a few cassettes. Yes. So George Gershwin, I haven't opened this one yet, but I have another Gershwin I opened earlier. But I didn't want to open it right away because it's like, holy, like, how much is this worth? This is probably worth like $10 on eBay. I saw another one of them, so I was like, I don't know, should I open it?
You should. You should record an MK. You should record an Andreas video. Well, tape it. Put it on a tape. Like make tapes of it and like spread them through the apocalypse.
So I found this thing in Salinas that's been in a box since it was made, just about, and it's a 4-track multi-track cassette mixer from Yamaha.
Whoa.
And the 8-tracks are cool, but the 8-tracks have a little bit more noise, but the noise is pretty well reduced. But the 4-track is like perfect. And you can't listen to this tape in a normal tape player. You can only listen to it in another multi-track tape player, because what it does is instead of recording on both sides, it records 4 tracks along this tape. And that way you can move up and down the analog mixers, and you can master a tape, and you can change the speed and everything like that. Then you output it to that other tape player I showed you, and you can record a stereo tape with it. So that might be my plan. So I can put cassettes of my own making in the car, which is pretty silly to do, but I don't know. I like analog sound. I don't know. Kurt, what do you think about all this? You mess around with this stuff?
I never really messed around with any cassettes. I've always been digital. It's nothing wrong with it. Sometimes if you specifically go for I guess a mono mix, it can have a charm to it if you're going for a specific sound. I think some people do that. Like Jack White has known for doing goofy stuff like that. So it can have a really interesting effect to it, but it's not something I'm obsessed with just clarity of tone, and I want no other like aesthetic distractions in like what I go for. So it's like, it's not my thing, but I appreciate anyone who just has a flavor for that kind of thing.
Dude, that fluttering, that tape flutter. I don't know. It's a nice feeling. I know what you mean, though. Yeah, there's other things. I've been doing a lot more of the left and right channel by mono mixing, so you can change the flutter of sound. Today was also a really horrible attack in Israel. 9 Palestinians killed in deadliest West Bank raid under new Israeli government. I was listening to the BBC earlier about this, and they were, kind of trying to justify it. Israeli occupation forces killed 9 Palestinians and injured at least 20 on Thursday during violent raids in the occupied city of Yenin and its refugee camp. The raids began the evening of January 25th and persisted into January 26th and was being described as one of the deadliest days in the West Bank since last year. I mean, that kind of sums it up, right? Not just the picture, but that quote, like since last year. So this is just getting worse and worse. What do you guys think about this? I mean, while we're here worried about what's going on in the Ukraine, I feel like other people are able to move a little faster in their own goals. No one's stopping this.
Are you stopping it?
Who's jumping to the Palestinians' defense? Right, exactly. That's fair.
Jeez, that's a cause of vehicles. Like that's look at that. That's ridiculous.
It's out of control, man.
It looks
I
like
don't
they're
know.
throwing the vehicles around. Like it's just chaos.
Yeah, it's weird because like in Yemen they're blocked off, right? And you can't get
Yeah.
out. So you're stuck in this ghetto that you're not allowed to leave. It sound familiar? And yeah,
Sure.
it seems kind of crazy because it seems pretty hypocritical. And I know that we're supposed to stand for the rights for every person to have a state. But yeah, what about Palestine? Does Palestine get to have a state too? If everyone gets to have a state? How's that work?
Not too
I mean,
good.
The West is very pro-Israel, so it's natural that this won't be all over our media pages.
True. Yeah, but is there any resolution to this other than just like the slow decimation and eventual extinction of the Palestinian state?
Armageddon, I guess.
I mean, we had Obama.
that.
You know, we have. Don't you think that there is no push for Muslim equality? Like, it feels like the West want. Why
course.
can't Israel become a UN state that is secular? Isn't that originally the goal? No.
Or you cut out on my end. Is there just what was your last comment there?
Oh, I was just saying, isn't that the goal? Kind of. Originally, Israel was supposed to be a secular state. It had Israelis. You have Jewish people, but you also have Arab people. It wasn't supposed to be a race state, right?
Okay.
And now it's becoming that, where it's like if you're, and you know, it was also a lot of Israelis they were like secular Jews from Holland or New York. They weren't even religious Jews. A lot of Jews aren't religious. And yet it's becoming more and more important because they're trying to culturally solidify what it means to be Israeli, which means to not be Palestinian.
But to be the chosen people, right?
Yeah, that's a weird one. To be God's chosen master race is a weird juxtaposition.
It's very close to supremacy.
Yeah.
Very close.
God appointed supremacy.
I just want to find the balance, you know, because I love all my friends I have friends who are rabbis, and I think that they're really fascinating and interesting people. They're exceptional people. But I also have friends from Jordan and from the Arab Emirates who are really amazing people too, amazing scholars as well. So it'd be nice to figure out a way that we could coexist. Do you see the problem as being, I mean, what I hear, it just seems like they don't want to coexist. I mean, can we force it? Is this like the Civil War Reformation? Can we force coexistence? Should we?
I don't think you can force, but you can coerce it. And you can perhaps spread it mimetically to like gradually change the way people act and think about Muslims and Jews. You know, like that'd be like a sitcom or something. Like, oh, a Muslim and a Jew get an apartment together.
Nice.
And, you know, see what happens kind of thing.
That's a new movie. What's that guy who played McLovin?
Oh, I forget his name.
Just call him McLovin. It's fine.
Yeah.
No, but I need to look it up.
Mintz-Plasse?
What's his name? McLovin. Come on.
Christopher Mintz-Plasse.
Oh, no. But the bigger guy who's his friend in the movie.
Oh, Jonah Hill.
Oh,
Yeah,
Jonah
sorry.
Hill.
Jonah
Yeah,
Hill.
you're like,
Muslim.
who's McLovin?
Sorry,
No,
my
but the
bad.
guy who plays his friend.
I'm distant from the movie. Anyway, there's this new movie called You People, which is supposedly similar to Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. I like how the Canadian flag, did you see that? It just sort of popped in there. Basically, have you seen Guess Who's Coming to Dinner? Do you guys know what that is? Guess Who's Coming to Dinner with Sidney Poitier is in Hepburn.
No, I saw the remake with Ashton Kutcher.
Oh God.
Yeah,
Oh, God.
It's called
Kind
Guess
of like
Who, isn't it?
the preacher. What is it? The one with
It was very
Denzel
bad.
Washington.
I don't do the remake. Maybe it's good because Ashton Kutcher is an interesting. What's his real name?
He
Christopher
is an
Ashton
interesting-
Kutcher. He's a Calvin Klein model from Iowa. I'm always interested in what he does besides Kabbalah, and even that. But Sidney Poitier, is a UN doctor for the WHO, who's on his way back to Africa. He's got a British accent, and he's in the process of marrying this girl from San Francisco. Her parents are middle class, upper middle class, probably lower upper class. And because if you could look at the New English accent of Katharine Hepburn, but then they are not used to black people. So they have to get used to the fact their daughter's marrying this guy, but also interestingly enough, that she's marrying up, that it's kind of like they're Okies because they're these Californians and he's this amazing doctor. So it's this interesting class, racial and socioeconomic, all the different levels are juxtapositioned and it's very interesting, but they wanted to mix it up. So they made this new one and Jonah Hill's marrying a Muslim girl, but she's like a modern Muslim girl and he's a Jewish boy. It's exactly what you just suggested. Right, and isn't he marrying like Queen Latifah? Is what or something?
It's close, but not exactly. I'm thinking more like Seinfeld and the guy from Community there.
Oh yeah,
Abed.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Little Mosque on the Prairie kind of does it. I still think that it's an underrated show.
Have you actually watched the show?
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, it's not amazing, but I did see like 4 seasons of it probably.
4 seasons?
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, so this bro...
That guy's in Blue Dot Saints, so that's something.
Yeah, it's a weirdly watchable show. So he's like a Muslim, but he's a modern Muslim, and he moves to town where this guy's kind of finagling to take over the town, and the Christians need to rent out the church, and I don't know where they are. But yeah, then he's got this Calgarian wife, you know, and his daughter, and she's supposed to marry him, and it's... You know, he got everything. There's the priest guy who's trying to rent out the church to the mosque and everything. I don't know. It's watchable. Yeah, what's up?
So far,
Phil's
I gotta go. Unfortunately, right now.
Oh, Phil, I'm sorry. Phil, is there a place you want me to point to where they can get some of your content? Or
no? Take care.
Okay. All right, bro.
Phil, later, bro.
Cheers,
guys, if you want to reach
Phil.
out to Phil, you can still find him in the Advanced Philosophy Memes group, which is this group right here. Any thoughts on philosophy? Wait, didn't pull up this group right here. There we go. The Advanced Philosophy Memes group.
Currently, Andreas
Philosophy Memes group. Well, we'll fix it in a week or something. It should be fine. So, anybody have any thoughts on gender? Here's my next question. They're saying that the war is going to require more drafting of people. Women don't really require any more than men do at this point for electronic military equipment. Why not just force universal draft of everybody if you're forcing it on men?
They're the gentler sex. That's why.
The men are?
Exactly. All female army. We're Amazons.
So China has universal, not necessarily universal draft, but essentially. And the Chinese female military, the portion of the military that's female is about 320 million people. So there are more women in the Chinese army than there are people in the United States.
What?
Wow.
And I think Canada combined, right?
What? Jeez,
Holy
their
shit.
women can all just kick our ass, dog.
So I mean, I don't know. Maybe are we losing?
Look, they got more medics. They got more medics than people we have.
In the gender, are we losing in the gender war? You know, the gender race. Like maybe this is what we need to do.
I don't think it's a war.
The West.
Well, they have birthing restrictions, so it's like they're not killing as many mothers.
Yeah.
Go over 2 photos. Go over.
It's a different way to kill the Chinese women. You know.
Jeez.
Yeah, there's a lot going on. I don't know. It seems like we don't push our military or our system to have a military strongly. Why is that? I mean, don't you think that they're trying to prepare to take over the world if they're doing this? Shouldn't we be kind of doing something?
I think my strongest theory is that there's probably like secret technology that we already have that we're like, we don't worry about the amount of sheer numbers they have. That's meaningless. That's like one bomb, one well-placed bomb makes it meaningless. You know,
one vial
biggest wipes out all those numbers. Yeah,
our biggest
Akira, you know,
against China was literally expanding the forces of globalism. It's honestly really hurt them in the long run. The fact that they have so much essentially subservience to other countries through their manufacturing sector. I think it's really I think it's set them back a long time in terms of how much resources they can actually put into anything like a war. So on that front, I think that's been. I don't think the Communist Party would be in power right now if it wasn't for how much we've essentially, we globalized everything and made their workforce subservient to everyone else.
It's true.
Yeah.
We're in the process of watching China slowly take Taiwan, but the United States keeps kind of feigning that it might help defend Taiwan. Have you guys heard if Canada is going to help with Taiwan or not?
You're gonna cheer them on, probably.
Yeah, are you guys like pro PRC, like your state is? Where does Canada stand on Taiwan?
Generally, it's one of those things they avoid talking about, but they always support Taiwan, support the people of Taiwan, make business with China, basically.
The people.
Yeah, it's meaningless.
Canada follows a one China policy, which acknowledges that there is only one Chinese government, does not recognize Taiwan as a sovereign state, and does not maintain official government-to-government relations with Taipei. This is different from Beijing's one China principle that insists that Taiwan is part of China and will be reunified with the mainland one day under Chinese Communist Party. The dispute over independence began, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so in other words, they're doing the same thing where they consider it a trading partner, but it's still not a state recognized. So... I mean, what do you think? This is the year probably that Taiwan gets swallowed? I mean, and nobody's really stepping up to do anything. Do you think that there's going to be any? Everyone's pretending like there will be. I mean, I keep hearing the United States say it wants to defend Taiwan, and then it just doesn't do it. So, is there going to be a takeover when we finally just give up on that?
There's no way. There's no way. There's no way, unless it's on purpose to like usher in World War III. There's no way they're actually going to do anything.
It's just so hard to defend. To defend a place like Taiwan just because for pure geographical reasons. You're fighting an uphill battle once you start trying to stand in on other countries' behalves thousands of miles away. So from it's like you want to from a moral standpoint, but it's just like when you're worlds away, it makes it that much harder to realistically do anything about it without triggering, a war in which you're at a severe disadvantage. So it's so many resources that's the real aspect I think prevents a lot of things from happening right now.
I feel like people keep acting like war is not very inevitable, even though it seems super inevitable, right? Like it's just this thing. They're like, well, they wouldn't do that because that would lead to World War III. What the heck do you think we've been doing for the last few years?
Yeah,
or decades?
They're timing it.
It seems like they're getting ready.
They're getting ready, but they've been stretching it out for a while.
Well, yeah, you save up until you can afford a big war. Is what it seems like they're doing. Also, maybe there's some weird occult, like they pick the stars being in a certain place or something like that. But I mean, I don't know. I see this as being kind of inevitable, and I wonder, don't you feel like it's close, or do you think that you really feel like this year we'll get through another year without there being a major violent I mean, we've got Ukraine, I guess, but that's not very impressive to everybody. What's it going to take for people to decide we're in World War III?
The war comes home.
Mm-hmm.
So we need like September 11th. They need some September 11th.
I think it'll change once people have soldiers from that country in our country.
Exactly.
Until then, it feels separate. It feels like everything's just different. Like, I mean, it's separate because there's literally the media between you and it. And until it's in front of you, no one's going to register that it's actually happening right there. They're just going to be like, well, now I can't have my latte because it's $25. And that's pretty much the only thing that's really going to change.
Yeah, it kind of feels like will we actually see? So, I mean, in Taiwan, we're seeing it, but in Canada, the United States, it might just be as simple as they sell big chunks of Canada and the United States to China to build factories in, right? Just to pay off debts. And so it might not seem like an invasion because we might just welcome them to take over parts of Idaho or Alberta.
Depends how long they wage war.
Right? China, what's it called? 100-year lease it, Canada.
Depends if we get Red Dawned.
Yeah.
I want to
there's a
ask
number of
about
these.
Vincent's paintings in the background.
Yeah, let's do it. Vincent,
All right,
what you got going on?
Well, there's two of them. There's one you're working on. There's one there's the one that's red and like blue and green. It's got the two color scheme going on right directly behind your head. Yeah, the tall one. Well, it looks beautiful from this standpoint.
Try to bring the camera, but I rip off the wall. I could show you a cool painting instead, bro.
Sure.
This one, I mean,
No, I'm getting like Red Dragon vibes from it.
Nice.
you have to see it on acid, you know.
There you go.
Did you paint it on acid?
Attaboy.
This one.
That's cool.
Okay.
I love that. Wow. So I was just thinking about this Alice in Wonderland quote the other day. Lewis Carroll's quote. I wouldn't go back to yesterday because I'm not the same person I was then.
That's rad.
It's a great one.
That's a thinker. I'm gonna have to get back to you on that one.
Vince is doing some pretty great art, and he actually like tells stories about each one of the paintings he does.
His art is awesome. The
Oh, there you go. That's pretty badass, dog.
way you capture light is gorgeous.
Is that all grayscale? It's awesome because like I'm thinking I'm seeing blue, but if it's totally grayscale, that's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Then what's this one about? What's this one about? Tell us about it. Yeah.
Well, this one is part of a series I made called Night Watches You.
Nice. I
So
like
it's
that.
basically like I have a few variations on it, and then I combine them.
Oh wow.
That's groovy.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. That's groovy as hell.
Interesting.
But like you can combine them by putting them side by
Nice.
side. So like you can put it like this.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
yeah. That's
nice.
so cool, dude.
Then there's a third one that goes on this side. And so the
That's
idea is
gorgeous.
you can mix and match them. This is what I
I
do.
like that.
Did you study art?
I did. I went to Dawson in illustration and design,
Oh, nice.
but I dropped out and I guess at the end of the second year,
Yeah.
I failed one of the programs because I mean it was kind of really shit. So whatever.
I'm a 2-time art school dropout.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but the second time it was design school, and it was because I actually started to get a lot of work, so it was dropping out for the right reason. The first time was just because art school is a lot of BS.
Oh, I agree.
Oh, Vincent, do you know Burkhauser?
Brickhauser? Who is that?
Yeah. Let's see. Let me see his full name here. Peter Burkhauser. Well, he was a dream artist. I think he had contact with Carl Jung, but that's what some of your work reminded me of, because like I watched a whole series on his work, and no, he has some pretty interesting stuff. If you ever look it up,
What's his name?
You can write it in the private chat.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right here.
Kurt's
Well,
fanboy.
I'm a psychedelic artist, but I'm also a noir artist, so I kind of teeter on both sides. And
Yeah, I could see both of that in those ones you showed us.
Mm-hmm.
but
Yeah.
I mean it's visionary art, so like it's designed to actually be taken with entheogens, and so it's made for psychonaut houses.
That's awesome. I think there's overlaps there. Yeah, thank you, Andres. Like
Oh, wow.
he did. Yeah, he has
Oh,
some.
kind of like
wow.
like kind of like Munch.
Oh, that's
No,
like
and
that.
he
Totally.
And I think he did it. Well, he wasn't really a psychedelic user.
He was something, that's for sure.
Yeah. So I think
it's either his brain had a problem.
His name was clearly named after people who ate mushrooms.
Or he did take some psychedelics at some point.
Possible.
It's very possible. You'd be surprised how much art out there is made by psychedelics. Like most of the more music than you can think, more math than you can think has been generated from psychedelics than you can imagine. Music, art, all of it. It's all there.
There's also a lot of art too, though, that looks like it would have been created on psychedelics and it hasn't. Like I know particular artists who, everyone just assumes that they're like on something because of just how far out their work is, but they're totally sober.
Supposedly Francis Crick was on LSD when he discovered the double helix and was a member of the Rosicrucians.
Yeah. But the thing is that apparently your brain produces these things naturally, so you can actually produce DMT naturally, which means that like you can actually get a moment like an epiphany or a profound moment where you feel connected with everything, and a moment where everything is just brighter, and you can get internal. Well, I mean the term is entheogen, so it's like generating God within. That's basically like the translation of it, and that's what you do. And when you make art, you're creating, and artists tend to tap into some sort of, I don't know, weird neurochemical like cocktail that they have. Like it's peculiar for each one, and it generates different art for each one. So some people are just naturally more DMT producing than others, and some of them are more depressing than others. And,
D made it back. We were worried about you, D. How's it going?
Sorry. What I miss.
I like that. It's like you just returned to class after like smoke break. That's what I used to do. Sorry.
Go for a smoke break in between class. Sorry.
You got me.
But I'm very inspired by like Alex Gray. And Alex Gray is like, he was one of the ones that started with not the porn star.
Oh my God! Right. Thanks a lot for that. Moderate was on. Thank God.
I mean, it started through.
This art's dirty enough.
Really?
Look at that. That would be banned in the Midwest. I'm pretty sure. Oh wow! Look at this guy.
Yeah, but this guy made the art for Tool. So
I was gonna say that's very Tool.
I met Alex Gray once and went to his temple, and I have a friend of mine who actually painted at Alex Gray's temple in New York.
The Chapel of Sacred Mirrors.
Right. Curtis Curry Hobo. He did some art there. And I have another friend who has one of his paintbrushes. I like Alex Gray's wife. His wife is really cool.
She's a great artist too.
I forget her name. Allison? Something like that?
Allison Gray.
Yeah, Allison Gray.
Nice. Allison something?
Good point. Yeah.
She's
language.
An entheolinguist. So she makes like proto-language.
She figured, she's like a median for language, exactly. So she picks up on language from other realities, or I don't know. It's amazing. I love it. That's some of my favorite stuff. Is his wife's stuff.
I think this is an acid tab, by the way.
It does look like it's designed to be one. I don't know, but where's art? Something like that. Yeah, things like this. Reminds me of like 1992 or something like that.
That is actually an acid thing. Yeah,
that's good. Good for them. That's probably. So that's the other thing. Is it contacting like spirits? Or is that the idea? I mean, are we connecting to specific places with this, or is this just in your head?
In my experience, there's something authentic to it, but it's hard to articulate because it's ineffable. It's like, I mean, it's literally a linguistics issue. So. Like if you see what they're talking about, like in an actual psychedelic experience, like you recognize that in their art after, you can see what they're talking about, you can understand, because it's like what they're doing is they're transforming it into another form of language. Like art is just like it's a translation of what they're seeing. So even Alex Gray's art, that's just him trying to get a tiny percentage of the amount of information he actually experienced in that moment.
Yeah, I definitely wonder.
To me, like the thing is, what the picture that you had right before the one that's in the Tool song, like it's on the net of being. It's right there.
Which one is it? This one? No,
Well, like,
this one.
The one on net of being. If you go down, net of being is right there. You're right in the middle, a little lower. Well, yeah, but that thing right there. But it's also right of it. Right there. That thing.
Wow.
This is basically is described in the Bhagavad Gita.
Right.
What I can understand based on the translation from Hindu, but it basically describes it's like a place that's also a person or an entity, and it's like everything. So it's like it sort of describes a meta reality or meta being that is all of us at the same time. The net of being, basically.
Yeah, I wonder because that's an interesting thing: collective consciousness versus how much of this is our own individual experience that we're learning how to meme. So much of it's learning how to respond the same to stimuli. But in that way, we create these sort of waves because we can predict what people are going to do. So, I mean, how much of it is that there's a collective realm? I mean, do you feel like there's a collective realm?
Yes.
Oftentimes.
Tell us about it.
Take it away, Kurt, with that answer.
Oh, I think Dee's internet connection is terrible because I feel like she could jump in on that. But
sorry, hand the ball.
No,
pass the buck, then, Kurt. Pass the buck.
Yeah, I'm trying, but no, the collective conscious, collective unconscious. The more I have meditated on the world, and I've tried to, like this past year, I think I've learned a lot more about Buddhism, and I'm a huge fan of Buddhism. I'm a little bit of a nominist, I guess, and when it comes to religion, I think they're all trying to point towards something in some way, and we've had different lenses with which to view it, and that's part of the explanation of why we have so many religions. It's like we're getting different refractions of the same generative energy. It's pretty cool. But with the Buddhist take on how we interact with the world, I guess if you look at the world in terms of, I guess, a little bit of a Platonic perspective, and you say that everything is just evidence of something else, well, what is that something else? What is that form that's expressing itself? If you start trying to interpret the world through that lens, you start to interact with the world as if the world has a conscious interaction with yourself. So when you treat the world as if as if the world itself is conscious, it's very transformative in your own personal life, because I think you realize in a sense how small you are, and the fact that you're a small node on this big complex system, and you can't possibly understand your full role in that. But you understand that the world definitely works as if it's its own conscious entity, because what if you treat every single person as if they're a neuron in this big brain of a system? I think you can understand parts of the world that are hurting, and you can understand how you move towards being a transformative part of that system. Am I making any sort of sense there?
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I think the key to actually, the way to access it is to recognize synchronicity, and to actually find that synchronicity in your life with the universe, with everything else, where you're actually feeling like you're actually part of it instead of being separate from everything.
Steph, you were do you remember your train of thought? Do you want to try to pick up on what you were thinking about it?
No, I agree with what Kurt was saying, and I wouldn't be able to explain it in that same way. It's very well said. But yeah, I certainly experience a lot of like Vincent was mentioning, synchronicities and just weird things too, like where it's undeniable and it catches you off guard. And And I do sometimes wonder if I was, even more consciously aware of that or in touch with that, to what level I would be experiencing it. But I certainly, especially in the past few years, have had just experiences in my life where it definitely feels like something bigger than you is guiding you. There's like an undeniable energy and undeniable messages, and the way things just line up, it can be almost scary sometimes. There can be a lot of moments where it's like, get out of my head, like, I don't know, where you feel exposed, like your thoughts are exposed or whatever it might be. Moments of like slight telepathy.
Yes. Yeah, I
was going to
fully
ask
believe
you
in
about that if you
telepathy now.
experienced that.
Telepathy is 110% real.
Yeah.
I think we're all given telepathy, and it lies semi-dormant in our subconscious, and that's why, I mean, you can't prove it at all, but like that's where it is, and that's how you access it through your subconscious. Like, and I think there's some scientific basis for a theory of telepathy, because there's so much that we don't know about matter. Like, how did we know X-rays existed until we discovered them? We just didn't. We assumed that there wasn't that specific type of energy transfer. So now a lot of scientists would say, yeah, I believe in quantum entanglement. These things that are unassociated with each other apparently can be connected, light years away. Those particles are just connected. Well, how couldn't that very easily be related to our our brain waves and our electrical impulses? If you're 100, I think a lot of people have experienced being hundreds of miles away from a person, and then they just pop in their brain like, oh, I'm thinking of this person now, and then they text you. Like that's definitely happened to me.
I have one friend, but that used to happen to me quite regularly in weird circumstances where, like, this was ages ago now. Like, he was living in England. I hadn't spoken to him in years and had a dream about him. And then the next night was like out and about. A homeless guy asked me for change, and I was like, well, I don't have change, but I can buy you something from the convenience store. I went into the convenience store, and the friend that I dreamt about, who I thought was living in England, just like appeared behind me.
Wow.
Like, I recognized his voice, and I was like, what are you doing here?
Wow.
But that's been a recurring thing with this friend. Like, we've been friends since maybe grade 9, probably one of my oldest friends. But typically, if he's in a dream, I will have communication with him out of the blue, maybe a day or two after. So little things like that. Really.
So do you think that that's installed from like knowing the person physically, like you've met them in real life, and that now you've got like an energy field, or do you think it can also be created over the internet? Like you can.
No, I think it can happen with strangers you've never met in real life.
It's like a pool. It's like a pool of thoughts that you can access and touch.
See, because that's interesting. Because then
the real cloud,
the internet.
Yeah, exactly.
We all are connected, and there is electric field between all of us at this point. So there's nothing keeping us from being able to connect. And there already was, because I guess we're talking about ground field before. Man, but telepathy is weird because we're often thinking about talking. Telepathy is this idea for TV a lot. They're like, I'm sending words to you. And is it that, or is it more feelings? It feels like it's not like that words are this secondary thing that we're experiencing beyond telepathy. And it's a separate kind of like a miscommunication. Do you think telepathy is different than communication, or is it a kind of communication?
I think it's a deeper communication. I don't know. Words feel so limiting. I struggle with words.
Yeah. I mean, if it's direct neural interfacing, right? So if you can do that, then no more lying. That's it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, not to segue.
A world where lying doesn't exist anymore,
Not to segue, but to tangent into that thought, Musk's 6 months from now will have the human trials beginning for Neuralink. And it was last week, I think, that precision neuroscience was started by Michael Major and Benjamin Rappaport, who were the co-founders of the BCI company Neuralink. So they left Neuralink to start their own interface company. And their own interface, what you bet, is going to be better than the Neuralink that Elon has, probably. But who knows? Who cares? I mean, the thing is, it's not one, it's many, right? There's going to be a bunch of different options. There'll be different kinds of links, different kinds of vaccines, different kinds of cell phones, different kinds of cars. People will have choices. They'll be Ford people again. I don't know. What's going to happen with this if this is in the next 6 months, though? I mean, in the next 6 months, they're going to start putting this into people's heads.
Zombie apocalypse.
Yeah.
Sorry, tech zombie apocalypse. Everyone's going to be infected with a virus that's going to be downloaded to their brains, and they're gonna rickroll us while eating us. It's going to be terrible.
Okay, so that's best case scenario. What else could happen?
Nice.
Oh, that's going to be
The
third
worst case
generation.
scenario.
That's first generation.
I mean, yeah, when it seems like no, actually, there is something to what you're saying. Because
Right now, it's in its infancy. There's no like. I mean,
But,
at worst,
no,
there's
you're-
going to be people who are going to have like seizures and like like they're going to fall asleep forever or whatever. Like
the first thing
gonna
you
be
said,
normal
though,
brain stuff.
that they might rickroll us might be more real than you realize.
Oh yeah, I'm being
the-
very serious in my jokes.
Yeah,
I'm
Neuralink.
very serious about joking.
The idea of regaining motor control function is a major part of Neuralink. So the idea that you'll be able to bypass quadriplegic spinal damage and be able to communicate wirelessly to your nervous system and to your spine and to walk again does also mean that the same technology could be used to hijack the body, to change where it stop you from walking into certain stores. Maybe you put like a parental control on yourself to keep you
lock
from...
down people. But that's where it gets dangerous. Where there's like, okay, maybe you can weaponize people. Maybe you can actually do terrible things with this technology.
And of course
it kind
they
of
would.
But you can stop crime. You can literally make jaywalking impossible. You know what I mean? You can stop crime. There would be no more.
It'll be like the
big problem.
The first 2 months, one of them's just gonna like pop, and it'll be the first one that explodes.
Why haven't they remade Clockwork Orange with a black guy yet? I feel like it's time. This is the year for it.
Daryl from The Office over here.
Yeah, I feel though like Clockwork Orange just kind of has this weird alien quality to it now that it didn't when it came out. At the time, that was what the world was like. So it'd be nice if they kind of recreated Clockwork Orange in a way that it was digestible for modern human consumption. I mean, we're going to get to a point very soon where if someone's a criminal or someone's a quadriplegic, they're going to be the first ones to test on it, right? And then that will mean that quadriplegics will be able to walk again, but also criminals, they're going to be able to just remove the ability for them to think bad thoughts and maybe install new personalities. I've had this thought, what if they install a person's personality that really likes to pick up trash on the side of the road, and just loves doing it. And that replaces the part of your mind that was sinning socially, whatever our crimes might be. And as time goes on, maybe that's not something you have to do for life. Maybe we're thinking at first, this is for really the worst criminals, but maybe it's just, you got like 6 years for bank fraud or something like that. And they just replace your personality for 6 years with somebody who likes picking up trash.
Well,
I mean,
at the same time, they could be like, oh, we'll raise someone's IQ or something. We'll take out some of the dumb parts of the person too. Like,
what is the debt to society, and how do they decide how much you owe to the society? I mean, that is the Lawnmower Man movie, right? That they decide to install this brilliance on this lawnmower guy because he feels like, he deserves the right to give back to society. I mean, it will be a big part of it, is this idea that, do we owe anything to society? Does anybody owe anything to society? Do you believe that at all?
Well, I mean, I don't know. Depends what you want. If you want anything from society.
It depends how you view society, and it depends how society actually is. Because like, there's always the perspective of it, but like it's a crazy thing to quote, but Charles Manson was saying, it's a prison out there, it's a prison in here. Like, to him, there was no difference, and
we live in a society.
Truth to that. We live in a society, and for a lot of people, it feels like a prison to be in this system. You have to have a cell phone. You have to have a credit card. You have to have a house. A lot of people are nomads. That's why there's so many homeless people. They don't want houses. They want to be out and free and trading and commuting, But now we're all put in boxes. Boxes with screens. We're very far from natural, and it's hurting people.
I mean, contemporary transcultural neo-nomadicism is what we call homeless now. So let's just calm down. But if you
just call them nomads, you don't have to say neo-nomads. They're nomads.
No,
the word
because
was already nomads.
Well,
ATM machine.
It means the same thing. They're homeless. Like, what the fuck?
There's a difference though, because you have people that have always been nomadic, and now you have people that have lost their culture, that have been forced to become Paleolithic for a while, and now or Neolithic, I guess, is to be fair, but it's not. You're stuck in this paradigm. We found that people that were nomadic lived decades longer, about a decade longer on average, and were about a foot taller on average. So people, after they stopped being nomadic, started eating worse. They didn't have as much diversity in their diet, and they were also dealing with black mold, and they weren't cleaning their houses, that they weren't moving as much, right? So you look at the Native Americans who were nomadic, and they were healthier by a standard, and they were also a lot taller in certain areas. If you look at, like, for instance, the Seminoles, or even the Cherokee, or the Algonquin are super tall too. There's a lot of Indians that are very much taller than the Mediterranean. Native Americans that were taller than the Mediterraneans that came over, that have been used to, that stopped being nomadic. And people looked at African Americans and said, hey, this guy is moving around from here to here all the time. That's crazy, which is something that might have been common in their culture. So there's certain groups that have continued to be nomadic. But now we've also instilled this new idea of how are you nomadic in an urban zone. It's the same thing that's happening to animals that are forced to cross freeways, where they're used to be able to do their natural migration. So things have changed. How do you push? You're forcing someone to be nomadic, but they're not very nomadic. They're just transient in a small city. And I mean, it's destroyed the nature of what it is to be nomadic. Whereas it could be very easily built a society where people could move from one, like couch surfing is very nomadic and very healthy. And it's a very modern way to do it. You could very easily go around the world. You've got infrastructure because you have a community, and then everyone can support each other to a limited extent.
It's a good way to spread bed bugs.
You know what? I only ever was like, I never had a problem in a couch surfing circumstance. One time I was going to work in this hostel though, and I literally walked out because I saw the beds, and I was like, oh. And then a couple of weeks later, I met some people that were working there. I'm like, oh yeah, they shut that whole place down, man. Bed bugs destroyed the whole thing.
Yeah,
like, oh,
bed bugs.
Yeah. Apparently, diatomaceous earth kills bed bugs. So there's that.
Yes.
There's a lot of wonderful things.
That does a lot. Yeah, I was just going to say, it does a lot of great things.
I was just looking at diatomaceous earth. Should be really careful with it. Apparently, you should never breathe it because it's like sharp crystalline razors that could kill you. But if you drink it in like a smoothie, apparently it has like silica. It pulls out heavy metals, but it also kills bugs, which is kind of interesting. I've been seeing a lot of these things recently that are marked as basically poisons that used to be considered health foods, right? Did you see the thing on arrows poison?
No.
Albane. So this was shown to me yesterday. There's this stuff called Awabane or Weibayu. I don't know, Weobayu. It was considered to be a heart medicine. Let me see. Medically to treat hypertension and some arrhythmias, but they basically stopped using it at this point. No longer approved in the US and France and Germany, and therefore around the world. But this was a pretty practical use, and the African crested rat actually uses this for medical purposes. Apparently, they're like ordinary hairs, but they're really spongy, fibrous, and also can use it to protect themselves. But that's pretty cool. I think that's pretty interesting. But this is a medicine that was kind of banned and turned into, now it's just considered a poison. And it's literally just called arrows poison. I mean, there's so many of these things that are natural that we're not allowed to use anymore that are kind of forgotten at this point. I mean, I wonder what's going to happen with medicine in the next few years, because so many of the things that we're relying on, they require them to synthesize chemicals that they can own and make it difficult to mass manufacture. Do you think we're going to head into a period where, I mean, like if it becomes difficult to get medicine, right? That's the other thing. They're starting to phase out pharmaceuticals because Neuralink's going to replace them. You won't need to take a pharmaceutical drug if your brain can be altered electronically. So they're all starting to invest in this.
Scary, man. scary stuff.
So will that create potentially a whole new slew of different ailments that can then be cured by Neuralink? Just like how
absolutely.
all of these things in our environment, there's always some type of pharmaceutical, antidote to them.
Well, it brings a new ecosystem into it.
Yeah.
It brings the digital ecosystem into it as well, because
Yeah.
now your brain is altered by programs, and you can be programmed. You can be uploaded a virus, just like you can have a virus, you can have a common cold, and then they can have a virus that, I don't know, makes it deadly or something, like it brings up biowarfare on a new level. It's just...
Yeah, that's true. So it could just be a whole internal thing, like make you sick and better at the same time.
Well, even in the weirdest way. So this is a really weird scenario, but let's just say that you install in yourself a part of your brain that's used to access randomly data for your work. And maybe you're a doctor, or you're a lawyer, or a helicopter pilot, doesn't matter. You've got access to that data, and it could be deleted at any time. Like you could be in the middle of flying and all of a sudden you didn't pay for it and it could be turned off. But let's say you've got it mostly working. Who built that data and what's it modeled on? And what if it's racist, right? And this is kind of, I'm using racism as an allegory here, but if you think about AI
that's
racism,
going to come up though.
Yeah, that's the example that comes up, is that AI has been constantly remarked as, well, hey, this is a pattern recognition system. You know what that means? The whole thing is stereotyping everybody. That's what it is. It's more a stereotype machine than it is a person, and I think it's kind of a person. So
are people stereotype machines though?
Yes, people are priority driven pattern recognition systems. So we have priority that drives that pattern of what we prioritize as seeing, or what patterns we look for, because there's patterns everywhere, so we only have time to really focus on the ones that are important. But those patterns are they're prioritized based on emotion, and emotion is interesting because it's this nervous system instinct, which you have precognition. They've shown people looking. Let's see if I can find it. Precognition. People looking at pictures, and then they record their brain right before they see the picture, if it's a terrible picture or if it's a beautiful picture, and their eyes and the response they have before they see the picture knows it's a terrible picture. So
you had that in your video this morning.
Right, exactly. Precognition. That's the thing that is, I think we're going to have to acknowledge as well, because of the nervous system. Sorry, Vince, you were saying.
Sorry, I got entranced by this picture.
Me too. I liked it.
Nice.
Precognition. Also, just the idea that AI could be responsible for making decisions you might be making, right? So if you're driving a car now that's AI driven, the law says that the AI driven car company owner is paying your insurance, because that car company is driving the car. That's the way the law works now. So you're not paying insurance, which is cheaper. Now, how's that going to apply to your brain? If your body, if the AI company is driving your body and your body's making decisions, but are you still signed over having responsibility for it? That's the question. How are they going to?
Sounds like a legal mess.
Yeah.
If you do something wrong, it's your fault. If something happens to you, they're not responsible. Basically.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's probably how it's going to turn out. I don't know.
Well, we're going to go through AR first, and augmentation. We're going to look through AR, and then AI is going to get so evolved, we're going to give it a proper body and a proper brain, and it'll transform us, hopefully.
I think we've almost moved past AR. Like Meta's kind of, people are not as excited about it. Disney's going to have
but with Neuralink,
Apple.
you could produce hallucinations over reality. You could put ads in there that are just appearing in front of you. Pokemon Go is going to get interesting, basically.
True. I think that's
tripping out.
That's what I expect. I'm saying. I think we're going to see augmented reality through Neuralink, and in the next year,
McKenna saying in the future, drugs will be a lot more like computers, and computers will be a lot more like drugs. I can't disagree.
It's pretty valid.
Used to have these dreams where I would be like eating computer chips, and I'd know I shouldn't be eating computer chips, but they tasted so good. It was horrible.
What did they taste like?
That's a motif in my comic.
Crunchy?
It's
Oh,
tech
yeah.
zombies. They just eat data. They just eat RAM. And
Like
shit.
edamame, kind of, I guess.
Ugh.
Like wasabi edamame,
It's
but
just
more
bleeding.
crunchy.
It's bleeding from the mouth. Oh, it's so good.
God, yeah, you should be careful with it.
Very
I don't know.
crunchy.
The
Like
thing
eating
is,
Legos.
some people are saying that they're skeptical that the human trials are going to start. So my thought is this: what if they don't start in the U.S.? Like they could start these trials in a country that bids for them, like New Zealand or
some island off somewhere, like Epstein. You just get some.
I'm sure that they've already done that. That's what I'm
Probably.
saying. I think now they're saying, can we bring it to Canada? That was my next point. Is if it might not be U.S., it might be Canada next. First.
I think that these sort of things pass through top secret first. So it's like, okay, look, we have to see how it turns out, and then we can announce it, basically.
Yes,
So,
absolutely.
Like if something actually goes horribly wrong, and you have like, I don't know, a Deus Ex moment, like where the AI just.
I know you said
decides
Deus Ex Machina, but I definitely heard Day of Sex. Just
No,
wanted
I
to
said
point that out.
I just said Deus Ex. I didn't say.
Okay. Still, yeah, no, I don't think it's going to be an immediate. I don't think it's going to be an immediate thing. That's the point. Is so many people are going to think, oh wow, well this is so basic. It's really not that big of a deal, and then that's going to allow for the next few things.
I don't know how advanced things really are. That's one main problem that I have. It's because like all we get is like Muggle information, because there's a whole layer that we don't actually know about. This is mainstream representation of what he does and who he is, and same for what the government does, and same for most science.
They have a map of the brain that can tell you what you're reading about. I remember seeing what was it, like the brain mind picture, reveal movies in our mind. There's the one, 2011. I remember these kids were working on this when I was in school, and they could image out of the brain what you're like. You're looking at this picture. This is the picture they're able to reproduce back in 2011.
Wow.
And there are better ones. That's just the beginning of it. I don't want to like get in copyright problems, but yeah, you're able to pick up shapes back then. So 10 years ago, pretty sure we're at a point now where they can do even better. But the fact that it even picks up colors in some circumstances is really interesting. So I mean, and this is again old technology. So the idea that they have full-on brain reading technology is that's probably high resolution now. Wouldn't surprise me. And then the thing about brain reading also is there's the LaRoche company built the substrate independent nanospore. Let's see, LaRoche nanospore, or just Roche. Sorry, nanopore. So this guy in Santa Cruz who I knew in school, he built this thing that has direct live real-time sequencing between the promoter sequences of blood and the computer, as well as it could be used for neuron interface or any other kind of purpose, really. And it's amazing. So basically, they've had the tech since 2007 to connect your blood sequencing and change that automatically. So this is more interesting than the Neuralink, because this is the kind of thing that could extend your telomeres, keep you living longer, younger, change your DNA subtly. You wouldn't need to get a flu shot ever again because you just like update all the time. And that's cool, but it's also terrifying because you could be like young and immortal until the day you die, right? What's that movie with Justin Timberlake? Nick of Time?
In Time?
Yeah, something like time.
In Time.
I think Nick of Time is a better name.
In Time.
Yeah, Nick of Time is the wrong one. That's Johnny Depp. In Time's correct. Good job. You've seen this movie. Basically, they get updates on their blood. They have a little thing implanted in them, and they're young, and his mother is young.
Their currency is time, right? Right.
They live every single day. If you don't have the next currency to update your blood, you'll die of AIDS in like 2 seconds. Basically, you just autoimmune system shut down. But you're young and healthy forever, right? And I feel like that's a pretty accurate what's going to come. And the way it works is there's extremely wealthy people that are buying other people's time, and then those people die, basically. And so some people are basically immortal, and other people are just passing by.
Well, it depends if we get a nuclear event, because at that point, we'll probably go underground, and I'll go in VR. So, depends on the timeline, basically. Depends which timeline.
Oh, that's interesting. I like that. Take that further. Hold on.
I mean, like the logical end of VR is to create a sub-reality, essentially. That like its primary application would probably be space travel, to make space travel more bearable, and even maybe
yeah. But I like where you were going. If you're underground, I mean, the idea of removing the person from the body, this is the kind of way to start training minds to be added. So in Star Trek and a lot of these shows, the spaceships have the minds of a whale or a human or something that's been combined together. So this would be a way to start deconditioning and separating the mind from the body, so they could use the mind.
It's virtual insanity, It's basically all live underground, and now there is no sound if we all live underground. Now it's virtual insanity. Forget your virtual reality.
So goes the rhyme. I mean, VR really does interest me, but it's funny. Like, they must have been doing it wrong on purpose. Like, how could they make the meta so terrible on purpose?
Look, I worked at a VR arcade for like a year now, and
with the Vive, HTC Vive, nice.
Yeah, we have the HTC. We had a few things. I don't work there anymore, but
see, I totally know how the arcades work and then I know which units they use. Those ones aren't bad. The HTCs are pretty good. The problem with them is that they require you to set them up, and so you can't just move them around very easily. But they're pretty good.
But sure. But don't you think they do things like, it feels weird? Like, there's something about some of these experiences you can have that, like, like it feels a bit like a Pandora's box kind of thing. Like,
so my buddy and I worked on the HTC Vive programs back in 2012, and I think my friend Joff in France, who's working in Davos in Switzerland right now, he worked for the French police and built a system that was basically like Minority Report. So I come into his Nantes lab, and Nantes where like Jules Verne was and stuff. So it already has this kind of French quality, magnormous quality about it, of futurism and fantasy cyberpunkism. So we go into this room, and I put on the headset, and all of a sudden it's just this cornfield, but the cornfields of faces, and the faces are stacked, and then you can just flip how they're sorted. And I was like, what is this? Like, well, this is a data system for the French police in order to track all the citizens of France and all of the civilians in France who aren't citizens, and be able to stack and sort them in different ways. And basically, it was a flat Earth with the sun and the moon in the center, and you can walk in a circle by turning around, and you have all these cornfields that just resort each corn row vertically, these different faces. And like, these are terrorist groups.
Wow.
Like, these are the Yellow Jackets. This was before the Yellow Jackets revolution, but it was, these are the protesters involved with the right nationalism in Le Pen. These are the left Marxists who are involved with politics. Who are
crazy, dude.
It's just, so
it's like from Heavy Rain.
So they have the ability to use this technology for sorting and for police, and I think that's been what it's been used for decades already. It's interesting that it's getting into the hands of people, but it also does seem like it will be used to depersonalize us.
For sure. All right, buddy, I got to bounce, ladies and gentlemen.
We're at the 2-hour bit. Jordan, let me take you to the Divulgence podcast and show them where they can get your content.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Guys, make sure you watch Jordan's videos. He's got a lot of really good ones.
Subscribe to the channel. Good. I just put out a new episode with me and Kurt, having a little chit chat there. So enjoy, subscribe, check out the new episode.
Epic. I didn't get to see this one yet. I guess you did it 45 minutes ago. That's awesome. We'll watch this right after.
So I appreciate all the new subscribers, and I appreciate everyone that's been hanging on since day one. And we're gonna have a kick-ass year. So starting with the Kurt episode of 2023.
Dude, looking forward to that. It's gonna be awesome. Make sure you guys also check out stephaniescott.bigcartel.com, and also you can get her. You can watch her art on the Instagram, Stephanie Scott,
and eventually on YouTube. It's in the process.
Seems like a good idea. Vincent, I can never spell your channel. Can you put it in for me again?
I already did. It's fine.
Oh, you're a good man. Thank you. Burning Sage Saga. He put out the Mimetic Curse of Dracula video, which is super based. And we were showing you earlier some of his paintings. So if you guys are interested in hearing him explain, Dracula is functionally an Antichrist figure that carries over hermetically, or do you say mimetically?
Mimetically.
There you go.
Well, this time around, my next one's going to be an Alice in Wonderland painting and talking about paracosms, basically.
That's going to be super based. I look forward to that. Also, American Time Machine. Let me see. There he is right there. Bernie, did you just show up? Are you kidding me? Bernie. Oh, Bernie.
I waited for the end.
All right. Well, American Time Machine, Kurt, the best music in the world.
Clearly.
If you guys want to listen to The World is a Person, I think that sums it up. Hey, look, my friends make 11 to 10-minute songs. That's pretty cool. I like that. Crypto Alchemist is a good place to get. If you're watching this, can go to the Burn Eye channel, which is streaming this right now, MKCANADA. But make sure you're also subscribed to Crypto Alchemist, the other channel. They're both very important to me. And watch all of his videos. Cold Electricity. We'll be doing something with Matt Rife and Gerald and
tomorrow.
All these people. Yeah,
and
tomorrow
probably Sunday with the Hutchinsons.
Oh, there you go. Sounds good. And everybody go to tartarynova.com, get into the Discord so you can join the conversation. If you want us to talk about other things or different things or these things more, whatever, if you want to talk about them yourself, join the Tartary Nova Discord, and that'd be a good place to start. And thank you all for being here. That's super awesome. I appreciate you.
Love you, bro.
Peace out.
Canada is a country. Waves of people came to this country, were welcomed by the folks who've lived here for millennia, the First Nation. And built this society with waves of people fleeing religious persecution, fleeing tyranny, fleeing to try and build a better life for themselves here than they had back home. Whether it's folks fleeing from world wars or fleeing from civil wars, these people always want the same thing: to be able to live in peace, to raise their families, to create a better future for themselves and their communities. And that is what generations created this extraordinary diverse society we have. Now, Canada remains one of the only countries in the world where citizens are, by and large, positively inclined. And one of the reasons we are that way is because Canadians have confidence in our